far beyond the outer rims of explored space, where even the light from nearby stars faded into cold shadows. The Veltraxian Deep Space Listening Station picked up a signal that didn't match any known frequency. The signal was faint, pulsing like a heartbeat across the emptiness, and it came from a direction marked as uninhabited. The Veltraxians were a proud and ancient species who had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 200 years. They had cataloged thousands of systems and conquered dozens of lesser civilizations, and in all that time, they had never seen a transmission like this. Curious but unconcerned, Commander Relith ordered his crew to analyze the data. The results were strange. It was not a natural anomaly, nor was it a coded message. It was a system ping. But the technology behind it was unfamiliar, and the way it echoed back was unsettling, almost like the source was cloaked in shadows. Relith narrowed his eyes and gave a small smirk. "Send a scout team," he ordered. "Let's see what kind of fool dares to knock on the door of the Veltraxian Empire." Within hours, 3 sleek cruisers were dispatched toward the coordinates of the signal. These were not just ordinary ships. They were hunter-class vessels equipped with some of the most advanced detection systems in the known galaxy. The crew was confident, even joking as they left the station behind. After all, what could possibly be hiding in such a dead part of space? But as they neared the source of the signal, the mood aboard the lead cruiser began to shift. The stars around them seemed to dim, and the temperature sensors started picking up strange fluctuations. Space felt different here, quieter, heavier, as if something ancient was holding its breath. Suddenly, the cloaked ship appeared in their path. It didn't jump in from warp space. It didn't make a sound. It was simply there, like a predator waiting in the dark. Its structure was strange, unlike any design in the Veltraxian database. It had sharp, rugged edges and a dull black hull that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. At first glance, it looked damaged, with scorch marks across its surface and parts of its armor dented or torn. One of the Veltraxian captains laughed. "A ghost ship," he muttered, amused. But something didn't feel right. They hailed the vessel. No response. They activated their scanners. The ship gave nothing back. Then, suddenly, without any visible power-up, a deep red glow formed along its sides. A high-pitched sound pierced through their comms. The hunter cruisers panicked and tried to lock weapons, but before any of them could act, a single beam of energy erupted from the strange ship, cutting through the lead cruiser in one instant. It wasn't a wide blast or a chaotic explosion. It was precise, surgical. One shot, one kill. The remaining 2 cruisers scrambled, trying to escape, but the ship did not chase them. It just hovered in the dark, watching. A message flashed on the sensors of the fleeing ships. First warning delivered. That was all. No voice. No signature. Just a line of cold, calculated text. By the time the 2 cruisers returned to Commander Relith's station, they were shaking with fear. Their report was brief but unforgettable. A single unknown ship had destroyed one of their finest cruisers without effort and let the others live on purpose. It wanted them to know it was out there. And it wasn't afraid. The Veltraxian High Command held an emergency meeting the next day. All kinds of theories floated around. Some believed it was a lost war relic from a forgotten race. Others thought it was a new pirate faction testing advanced weapons. But one voice in the shadows of the chamber whispered something that no one wanted to hear. "It's human." The room went silent. Earth had been known to the Veltraxians for years, a small, primitive world with barely enough tech to protect itself. It had been labeled as a low-priority observation target with no military value. But the ship that attacked their cruiser bore signs of rapid adaptive engineering. The power signature behind its beam was similar to something a Veltraxian spy once recorded near Earth's orbit years ago. Could it be that humans had developed a stealth warship? That they had discovered technologies far beyond their level and sent a test subject deep into enemy territory? The idea sounded impossible, but the facts said otherwise. Relith, now personally disturbed, demanded the Empire send a full fleet to destroy the mysterious vessel. But deep inside, even he felt something he hadn't felt in decades' doubt. That ship hadn't attacked out of panic. It had waited. It had chosen the moment. and it had let witnesses escape. This wasn't the behavior of a mindless machine or an out-of-control AI. It was the strategy of a living pilot, someone who wanted to send a message. And that message was loud and clear. The humans were not weak. They were watching. And they had just stepped into the shadows of the Empire without being invited. Meanwhile, aboard the dark ship itself, buried behind its walls of heavy plating and silenced engines, Captain Elena Graves stared at the glowing tactical map. The ship was quiet, except for the hum of energy that flowed through its strange power core, a new design developed in secrecy on Earth. Her mission was simple: enter enemy space, disrupt command structures, and let the Veltraxians know that Earth was no longer a distant planet to be ignored. It was a new player in the galaxy, and this was only the beginning. She leaned back in her chair, her face lit by the red glow of the targeting system, and whispered to herself, "They heard us. Good. Now let's see what they do next." The Veltraxian fleet moved with precision, 30 warships in perfect formation, their hulls reflecting the cold light of distant stars as they cut through the void toward the last known location of the human warship. The Empire had not suffered such a humiliation in decades, and the destruction of a Hunter-class cruiser by a single unknown vessel had shaken them more than they would ever admit out loud. It wasn't just the loss, it was the way it had happened, clean and intentional, like a warning from someone who knew exactly where to strike and when. Now, they weren't coming to investigate, they were coming to eliminate. Among the fleet, whispers moved through the lower ranks like wind through dead leaves. Some believed the mysterious ship was not of human origin, but an ancient AI gone rogue. Others said it was a weapon stolen by humans from a forgotten alien race. But none of them truly understood what they were up against. They only knew one thing: if they failed again, it would not just be a military setback. It would be a crack in the image of Veltraxian dominance that had held the galaxy in fear for over 2 centuries. On the bridge of the Veltraxian flagship, Commander Releth stood stiffly, his 4 eyes locked on the swirling data screens before him. His pride had been wounded, and that made him more dangerous than ever. He had served in more than 60 campaigns, had crushed rebellions, and burned cities from orbit, but this time, he felt something unfamiliar tightening in his chest, a subtle sense that this enemy was different. It wasn't their firepower that concerned him. It was their silence. The human ship hadn't roared into battle with arrogance or desperation. It had spoken through one calculated move, striking with deadly accuracy and retreating back into the dark. Releth ordered a communication burst toward Earth, an official demand for surrender and explanation, backed by threats of planetary blockade. But Earth didn't respond. Not a single word came back. And that silence, more than anything, unnerved the Empire's command. Far away from the approaching armada, inside the black hull of the hidden human warship, Captain Elena Graves reviewed the surveillance data without a trace of panic. She had been trained for this exact moment: first contact under hostile conditions, the kind where diplomacy was a gamble and war could be triggered by the smallest mistake. Her mission was not just a test of Earth's first deep strike ship, HS Blackout, but a test of humanity's readiness to stand on the same ground as the ancient galactic powers who had ruled for centuries. Elena wasn't just a soldier. She was a symbol of Earth's transformation from a quiet, overlooked planet to a rising threat that had learned to move in silence. Her crew was small but deadly, operating under a veil of experimental stealth systems and adaptive weapons that could change form mid-battle. They had been chosen not just for their skills, but for their loyalty, trained to fight in the cold, to disappear without a trace, and to send a message without using words. The Veltraxian fleet finally arrived in the region marked by the last encounter, but space was empty. No ship. No debris. No signal. Just endless black stretching in all directions. Releth's frustration turned to rage. He ordered the release of hundreds of probe drones to sweep every corner of the sector. They searched for hours, spreading like insects through the darkness, but still found nothing. And then, just as the fleet began to reposition, one of the smaller frigates vanished. No explosion. No warning. It simply disappeared from the tactical map. The alarm spread instantly through the fleet. Relith demanded answers, but there was only one transmission left behind by the missing ship. 5 words. Auto sent in the last fraction of a second before all systems went dark. It's inside the fleet. A cold chill passed through every crew aboard those warships. That single sentence meant only one thing: the human warship hadn't run. It had waited, and it was now hunting them from within their own formation. Panic began to rise among the lower commanders. Ships started breaking formation, scanning in all directions, locking weapons at shadows and sensor ghosts. Relith tried to maintain control, but the enemy was too fast. Another ship went dark, then another. One by one, the warships fell without a trace. No explosions. No escape pods. Just silence. The Veltraxians were being dismantled piece by piece, and no one could stop it. The blackout didn't fight like them. It didn't engage in open battle. It moved like death in the void, striking when they looked away and vanishing before anyone could respond. Then, without warning, a direct message finally appeared on the flagship's command screen, not intercepted, not forced, but delivered by choice. It was simple. First contact was your mistake. Second contact is ours. Relith stared at the words, his jaw clenched, his breathing shallow. This was no longer a skirmish. It was a declaration. Not of war, but of dominance. Back aboard the blackout, Elena watched the chaos unfold on her screens. Every action of the Veltraxian fleet perfectly mapped. Every ship marked, every weakness exploited. They had never expected a human to strike first or to strike smart. She activated the next phase of the mission: full system broadcast. Across multiple sectors, hidden satellites planted by covert Earth expeditions years ago lit up, broadcasting images of the attack, of the crippled Veltraxian ships, of the mighty empire being hunted by a single human warship. The signal went viral across dozens of species networks. The message was now public. Earth had entered the game, and they were not afraid to draw blood. Elena gave a small nod to her crew. The job wasn't finished. But the message was clear. The galaxy would remember this night. And from now on, they would look at humans with caution, not pity. For the first time in history, the great empire had been brought to its knees not by fleets or armies, but by the precision of one human ghost ship and the silence that followed it. They called it a myth at first, a whisper on the winds of space, an impossible rumor that floated from one system to the next like ghostlight, spoken by terrified survivors and dismissed by proud admirals. But the truth could not be buried forever. The phantom of war was real. It wasn't a ship, at least not in the traditional sense, and it certainly wasn't part of any known military registry. It didn't appear on scanners, didn't broadcast signals, and didn't follow the rules of engagement that governed the galactic powers. It came like a shadow in the void, silent and precise, striking with terrifying accuracy and leaving only wreckage in its wake. No one ever saw it approach. There were no battle cries, no demands, just sudden blackouts, critical systems failing without warning, weapons turned against their own ships, and then total silence. Only fragments of data remained, usually cut off mid-recording, showing frightened crews pointing at invisible enemies or warning lights, flashing just before the screen went dead. The galaxy began to fear the edges of space, the cold places where even pirates refused to travel now, where outposts vanished without distress calls, and where fleets went in but never came back. Everyone wanted answers, but only one thing was consistent in all reports. The term phantom came from a desperate transmission where a soldier, moments before his ship disintegrated, screamed that the war itself had gained a ghost. Deep within an asteroid field on the edge of unexplored territory, the ship known only to a few as the Spectre rested in complete silence. It was Earth's most secret weapon, a warship designed not to fight battles but to end them before they even began. The Spectre was the result of decades of black-budget research, a fusion of human ingenuity and alien technology recovered from long-forgotten crash sites. Its hull absorbed light, its systems mimicked space itself, and its AI core had learned from thousands of historical conflicts. It didn't just attack, it anticipated. Its captain, Lieutenant Commander Reyna Voss, wasn't chosen for her rank or her reputation. She had no medals, no public record of service. She was a ghost like her ship, trained to disappear, trained to observe, and trained to strike only when it mattered. Her mission was clear: stop wars before they started, and if they had already begun, erase their cause without being seen. And so far, she had succeeded every time. Pirate kings, warlords, rogue fleets, secret weapons, all had been erased without warning, with only cold wreckage and unanswered questions left behind. The galaxy didn't know her name, and that was exactly how it was meant to be. But now, something had changed. The Spectre had picked up a signal, a strange encrypted message bouncing between systems in a coded pattern that only Earth's hidden network could detect. The message didn't come from a known enemy. It came from a planet that had been destroyed 20 years ago in a war everyone believed had ended. The transmission was faint, looping, and old, but it carried a human voice. A voice that should not exist. Reyna listened to the message in her quarters, her eyes narrowing as the recording repeated, "They lied. The war never ended. We are still here. Don't trust the silence." The voice belonged to Captain Elias Marr, a man who had supposedly died with his crew in the Battle of Denari's Edge, a battle that had supposedly marked the end of the Earth-Kareth War. But Reyna had read the hidden files. Marr's mission had been classified even before the Spectre was launched. He had gone into enemy space with a prototype ship, and according to the official report, he and the Kareth flagship had been destroyed together in a mutual final strike. Yet here was his voice, calling from the grave, warning of a lie so big it could ignite the galaxy once again. Reyna knew what she had to do. She rerouted the Spectre's course, plunging deep into forbidden space, beyond the old war zones, toward the dead planet where the signal originated. She didn't ask for permission. Spectre-class missions didn't need it. But as they approached the planet's orbit, everything felt wrong. The world below was lifeless, covered in black scars and cratered remains, but the signal was still strong, pulsing from beneath the surface. Reyna sent a recon drone, but it was torn from the sky before it could finish its scan. The Spectre sensors picked up movement, underground facilities activating, energy signatures rising from the depths like a sleeping beast waking after decades of silence. And then it happened. A fleet emerged from behind the shattered moon Kareth warships, but not like the ones in historical files. These were newer, sleeker, deadlier. Their symbols had changed too, no longer the mark of the old empire, but something more savage, a reborn faction built from shadows. They had never lost. They had hidden, rebuilt, waited. Reyna's instincts screamed at her. This was no rescue mission. This was a trap meant to bait the only weapon the galaxy feared. They knew about the Spectre. Somehow, someone had known it would come. She cloaked the ship instantly, activating the deepest stealth protocol, and drifted silent among the debris field. But the enemy didn't need to see her. They were hunting her by data trails, by ghost signals, using the same tricks Earth had once used. The hunter had become the hunted. Reyna initiated a memory wipe of the Spectre's core. If they were boarded, the ship's secrets would be destroyed. Then she set the engines to silent drift, hiding the ship in the remains of an ancient orbital station. As the Kareth fleet closed in, she activated the last message beacon, encoded to Earth Command. It was short and clear: the war never ended. They're back. And they know us. Then, alone and invisible, she prepared for the next move. But the phantom of war was not meant to die in silence. Reyna launched a ripple through the Kareth fleet, an electronic pulse disguised as harmless space static. Within seconds, 2 ships lost power. A third mistook a fake signal for an incoming missile and fired at its own ally. The confusion spread like wildfire. Reyna didn't have firepower, not like they did, but she had something far more dangerous. She had knowledge. She had control. She was the shadow behind the curtain, the whisper behind every alarm. And now, even as the enemy surrounded her, they didn't know where to strike. They didn't know how many Spectres existed. They didn't even know if she was real. And that was her greatest weapon. As the chaos grew, as ships began firing blindly, she slipped away again, deeper into the dark, leaving behind only confusion and fear. The phantom had returned. And now the galaxy would learn, ghosts don't die, they haunt. Forever. For centuries, the galaxy believed it understood the shape of its history, the rise and fall of empires, the wars that had scarred stars, the peace treaties that held uneasy balance between civilizations, and the long-forgotten conflicts buried under layers of rewritten facts. But the truth was always deeper, hidden beneath the lies told to preserve power. On a distant research outpost, orbiting a lifeless red dwarf star, a small team of scientists stumbled across something they weren't meant to find: an artifact that didn't match any known technology, buried in an asteroid that had no reason to contain anything artificial. The artifact was a black sphere, smooth and cold, but it pulsed with faint energy, as if it breathed slowly in the dark. Dr. Ellen Varr, the lead Edzine archaeologist, couldn't understand its origin because every scan returned different results, like the sphere was deliberately misleading them. When they attempted to move it to their lab, the station's systems began to malfunction. Lights flickered, gravity fluctuated, and strange voices whispered through the comms. At first, they thought it was equipment failure, until one of the engineers started repeating words in a language no one had taught him, and his eyes turned completely black for 10 seconds before he collapsed. Terrified but obsessed, Ellen refused to abandon the artifact. Something about it felt alive, as if it wanted to be found. Unknown to them, far from the outpost, Earth's deep intelligence network received a signal, a code hidden in the station's regular status update. It was old, embedded in a cipher that hadn't been used for over 200 years, a time when Earth had fought a hidden war not even the citizens remembered. Admiral Risholden, a man who had grown tired of secrets, recognized the code immediately. It meant only one thing: a lock point had been triggered. A lock point was a buried clue from the ancient days, a seed of knowledge planted by a group known only in the most secure files as the Origin Division scientists and soldiers, who had vanished during the earliest days of Earth's galactic expansion. They had believed something was wrong with the universe, that the known history was just a layer covering something far more dangerous, and they had scattered hidden markers across space to protect what they had discovered. Rise had never believed those stories fully, until now. He dispatched a Ghost-class stealth ship, crewed by operatives who had no name or rank, to reach the outpost before word spread. If the artifact was what he feared, then no government, no empire, no civilization would be prepared for what followed. Back on the outpost, things grew worse. The artifact had begun to glow faintly, and crew members reported seeing strange visions: ancient cities of impossible design, planets spinning in reverse, stars being eaten by shadows with no mass. Ellen saw one vision that shook her to her core: humans walking beside beings that looked like energy wrapped in skin, speaking as equals, and then something terrible happening: blinding light, screams, and then silence. She realized the artifact wasn't showing the future, it was showing memories. She activated an experimental decoding matrix to link her mind with the sphere against all safety protocols. What she saw could not be forgotten. Earth was not the origin of humanity. They had come from elsewhere, far beyond the mapped galaxy, in a time so ancient even black holes had not yet formed. Humanity had not evolved on Earth, but had been placed there by survivors of a war that had torn apart entire dimensions. The artifact was a memory vault, one of many, created to preserve the truth in case the enemy returned. And now, after thousands of years, the enemy had awakened again. The ghost ship arrived just as the outpost's artificial gravity failed entirely. The artifact had activated a pulse, silent, invisible, but massive. Across the galaxy, ancient devices long thought to be natural phenomena stirred. Ruins buried under oceans, sealed beneath moons, hidden within stars, all of them flickered back to life. The enemy wasn't coming. It was already here, watching, waiting. It had been trapped once before by the same race humans had descended from, using science so advanced it had rewritten space itself. But now, the locks were failing. The crew of the ghost ship secured the artifact, but Ellen refused to leave. She had seen too much. She knew that if they didn't act fast, everything would fall again, just as it had in the ancient wars. Rise appeared via a direct comm link, and for the first time, revealed who he truly was: not an admiral of Earthfleet, but a descendant of the last of the Origin Division, one of the few who still remembered the real history. He told Ellen that her discovery had triggered the final protocol, and there was no turning back. The truth would soon reveal itself to all species, and with it, the choice to unite against what was coming or be consumed one by one. As the outpost crumbled from the artifact's energy, the ghost ship escaped into deep space, carrying the sphere and the data Ellen had decoded. Across the stars, strange things began to happen, ships vanishing mid-warp, people dreaming of planets they had never seen, symbols appearing in sky fields that only humans could understand. Some called it prophecy. Others called it madness. But those who knew the truth called it revelation. It was not just a story. It was the return of an ancient war that had never truly ended. A war between reality and the thing that wanted to erase it. The revelation had begun. For over 100 years, the Varnak Empire had ruled the galactic core with unmatched pride, declaring themselves the most intelligent, most advanced, and most superior species to ever rise among the stars. They considered other species primitive and weak, especially the newly arrived humans from the outer spiral. To the Varnak, humans were nothing but clever animals who had managed to play with fire without understanding it. Their arrogance was not hidden. It was declared on every official broadcast, written in every treaty, and carved into their great sky. Temples floating above conquered planets. When the Galactic Council offered Earth a seat among the stars, the Varnak laughed. They protested, threatened to withdraw funding, and warned everyone that giving humans access to advanced technology would be a dangerous mistake. But Earth remained silent. They did not argue. They did not beg. They simply observed. While the Varnak pushed further into unexplored regions, colonizing every world with arrogance and impatience, humanity moved slowly, studying, learning, building relationships instead of demanding submission. They sent diplomats where others sent fleets. And in silence, they prepared for something the Varnak would never expect. The first signs came from the edge of space, where a remote Varnak colony sent a distress signal short, panicked, and full of static. When Varnak Command arrived days later, they found nothing. No buildings. No bodies. Just scorched earth and strange marks carved deep into the surface, like something had melted through matter itself. The Varnak blamed pirates, then accused rival species, but as more colonies vanished always without survivors, their confidence began to crack. Then came the message. It was sent directly into the Varnak capital's planetary grid, bypassing all firewalls. A simple voice, in clear Varnak language, said, "The past returns. Prepare to answer." The message was traced back to a dead zone of space, one that the Varnak had marked as void of value, a system of blackened stars and shattered moons. They had dismissed it as lifeless. But when their scouts arrived, they found a massive object drifting between two moons a station, clearly human-made, but beyond anything seen before. It wasn't large by size, but it pulsed with something ancient, something wrong. One scout ship approached, and before it could scan, it vanished without a sound. The second ship stayed back and recorded the station glowing brighter, then sending a single pulse across space. That pulse, in less than 3 days, disabled half of the Varnak defense network. Not destroyed, disabled. Controlled. They held public speeches, called the event a minor disturbance, and warned that whoever was responsible would face the fury of 1,000 worlds. They underestimated again. Humanity sent a message not of war, but of warning. It contained coordinates, old galactic records, and copies of documents the Varnak had erased long ago from their own history. It showed that the Varnak were not the first rulers of the galaxy, as they claimed, but merely survivors of a great collapse. And that collapse, thousands of years ago, had been caused by a being known only as the Witness, a creature of thought and code, born from the ruins of a war far older than memory. Humanity had found signs of it during their first warp experiments. They had not told anyone. They had studied in secret, and when they realized what was awakening, they began preparing defenses not against other empires, but against this unseen enemy. The Varnak had once encountered it too, but they had hidden the truth and buried the evidence, hoping it would never return. Humanity, however, had done what the Varnak feared: uncover the real history. What came next was not war in the traditional sense. The witness began to appear in dreams, in code, in strange patterns within star systems. It whispered to machines, corrupted AI networks, and twisted reality in small, subtle ways. Entire Varnak cities woke up and found their